Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another topic. This topic is topic 4, organizing for efficient work. And so in this topic, what we talk about is the way that office workers can utilize their office spaces and take control of the work environment and the tasks that they have to do by being organized so that they can be the most efficient. And if you recall, talking about efficient involves being able to complete tasks that are required of you in a timely manner while still being accurate. Okay, and so we're going to talk about what it takes to organize your office space for efficient work. As usual, welcome to the office space. Let's work together to learn, share ideas, participate, and learn something new. The wise always seek knowledge. So we're going to start our conversation today talking about the way that offices are actually organized, because a main part of organization in offices is going to start with how management thinks that offices should be organized. And so a big part of that is going to be shared to staff members and everyone working in the office with what we call an organizational chart. If you recall, an organizational chart shows who's at the top of our organization all the way down to who's at the bottom. The person at the top makes most of the major decisions in the company. The persons at the bottom usually perform daily tasks in order to make sure that the business is operating the way the persons at the top want it to. And that's a form of organizing the company in a way that persons can actually see and know who's at the top and who's at the bottom. And it also lets you know who answers to who. When we look at the organizational chart itself, all companies don't have organizational charts. The bigger they are, the more organization is needed. And therefore, an organizational chart is much better or easier for the company to actually follow. If it's a smaller company, then it tends to be less people involved in the process. So let's take a look at advantages of just having an organizational chart. When we have a chart, what happens is it's easy to see where you stand in the company. What's your place? Am I a manager? Am I a supervisor? How many persons do I even have above me in the corporation? That's important. What it also does is it helps you to understand exactly who's in charge and who's responsible for who. Somebody above you in the organizational chart, if they are directly linked to you, is responsible for you in the sense of making sure you do what you were hired to do. It also helps you to see the different departments that work within the company, because maybe you might not be aware of all of the departments, but it gives you a quick overview of how the company is structured, who's a part of the company, which department are they a part of, who's their boss, which departments I didn't even know existed. It gives you a really good idea of how the company itself is organized. Disadvantages of these organizational charts are they can be pretty outdated. Could you imagine if there's a lot of changes in the organization itself? Somebody has to keep up with all of those changes and put them or organize them into the organizational chart. That doesn't always happen. And so therefore, they can get pretty outdated and show incorrect information. What they don't show as well, they show how organized the company is, but they don't show how employees feel about the positions that they're in, who they're under, or the working conditions of the actual company. They don't show things like that. As well as they don't show informal relationships. Maybe you have a boss that you're under, but maybe you're not comfortable with your boss and therefore you report to somebody else indirectly. You don't see these things when looking at an organizational chart because it's impossible to show. And so, although they are good ways to show how the business should be organized, it's not quite. It's up to the office worker to know what their role is, know who they answer to, and organize themselves in the working environment. When we talk about offices themselves, let's talk about the office setup. The office can be set up in 2 different ways: open, closed. Now, you can have your things like your virtual office that's just not in a present location. You can have your office from anywhere. But these are more of the traditional setup of offices. Presently, or in the past, closed offices have been considered to be more traditional because they're what we used to. They're offices where there are walls or dividers blocking in and giving the person inside a little bit of privacy. Versus in the photo here, an open office, everybody's sitting in one space. Everybody's working. You can hear what others are doing. You can see what others are doing fairly easy. And so therefore, it's considered to be an open style office. So whenever you have open and closed office, know that open means that everybody's sitting out in the open together. Closed refers to the fact that individuals have a lot of personal office spaces. In ideal office spaces today, you'll actually find a mixture of the two, with higher up individuals having a closed office space, with persons that are lower in the organizational chart having an open space because they're most likely working together. The managers and supervisors tend to want more privacy, and so therefore they're not really in an open space situation. When we look at both of them, in having an open space, it just means that, like I said, everything is open, everybody is in view, everybody is in hair sight. And so because of that, there's less privacy and less security. Information can go and be said on the phone that others can actually hear. So there's really no privacy and there's no security, because if something happens, everybody is at risk or in the open. However, even though these are some disadvantages of open setups, there's actually some benefit, because if you're working along with a team, you're more likely to communicate with your team and develop a relationship with your team in an open setting, because you're not secluded, you're not by yourself, you're together with your team. It's also easy to share things like equipment and tools. So with an open office space, there's no need for everybody to have their own personal printer. You can have one printer that everybody uses in the office. That's called shared. That's a shared equipment or shared tools that everybody can use in an open space. And so that means that the company doesn't have to buy multiple printers. They don't have to buy multiple supplies, because everybody is sharing those exact same supplies. And we just have to worry about maintaining and getting supplies for that one printer. However, of course, if something happens and it breaks down, then that's a challenge there. With a closed office, individuals work in their own personal spaces. So this is a more traditional closed office. A lot of, depending on the setup of the actual space and the seniority or the level of privacy needed, these might be full walls. But in this instance, we have clear office spaces that allows for some privacy in terms of hearing, but maybe persons are still able to see and make sure that everything is going well, everybody's safe, etc. In these type of closed office spaces, we have more privacy, we have less distractions, because you can't hear everything that's going on around you. But the disadvantage is it's harder to share equipment and tools without invading a person's privacy or feeling like you're invading privacy in a room. And then it's just more expensive, because now you have to maintain the space of individual offices, including walls and doors and equipment and tools. Persons have to have individual things now to make life easier, individual filing cabinets, individual equipment. And so that tends to be more items needed to be purchased by the company. So it makes it a little bit more expensive. And of course, there's more security for the person inside of the office, but could you imagine if a fire happens and the person in the office is not aware? That makes it a little bit less secure for them, because they are taken away from the general environment. They oftentimes, it's a little bit harder for teamwork as well, because you're not constantly together, you're not working together in an open space, right? And so that's just an idea of how offices can be set up in an organization. Next, let's talk about ergonomics. And so ergonomics is the study of the work environment on the health of workers. It affects things like the layout of a room, so how a room looks, whether it's open or closed, the design of an item to maximize comfort and safety. Normally, the human resources department is tasked with worrying about ergonomics. You want to make sure that the well-being of each of your staff members is well, they're as safe as possible. And so ergonomics is the study of it, looking at your office environment and making sure that certain things are being done that promote health and safety for employees. This is a big part of being efficient in the office space, because you can't do your work well if your body is compromised and if you're having a hard time. And so this is why ergonomics is pretty important. Ways to improve ergonomics usually involve purchasing furniture that improve health and safety and reduce risks for our employees, reducing physical stress in the workplace, as well as having rules and guidelines in place that promote safety and making sure that all staff are aware of these rules to make sure that they can be safe in the work environment. And so common things or items that are adjusted are normally chairs, desks, lighting, and equipment. Something as simple as the type of bulb or the type of lighting used in an office space can negatively affect how a person can see. Something as simple as having a chair that cannot roll or a chair that's too tall or too short for the desk can affect the way the person sits in the chair, can affect their knees, can affect their back. And so it's also very important. A company doesn't want to have injured staff. It leaves them open to lawsuits, as well as it's going to be much more difficult for staff to work in those conditions if they are uncomfortable. When we look at desks, they have desks and chairs that are designed specifically to make sure that the employee is as comfortable as possible. There's a reason why the keyboard on a lot of ergonomic desks are actually underneath the desk and not on the top, because that allows the person's hand to be laid in a certain position that reduces stress on the wrist. There's also a reason why, just like in the corner here, some chairs have a lot of different functionalities to make the person sitting in it more comfortable. All of this is a part of ergonomics and the study of ergonomics. There are so many ergonomically adjusted furniture and equipment that are there to help employees make sure, well, help employers make sure that their employees are safe and as comfortable as possible for the amount of time that they're at the work desk. Managing your workspace. A great part of organizing your workspace is going to come with managing it and making sure everything is arranged so that we support the theory of ergonomics. We support health and safety. And so a part of managing your office space means that we want to make sure that our desks are always arranged properly. And so that means equipment that we use frequently, normally we want to make sure we put that very close, because that limits the amount of times you have to reach forward or reach back for a particular item. You want to make sure that the hand that you're writing with, everything, if you're right-handed, everything is that you need to get to write with or use with your dominant hand is actually next to your dominant hand. And so that means some things that maybe you don't need to reach for frequently can be on your left side, versus items like pens that you can easily reach for to write should be on the side of your dominant hand. Things like telephones as well. When you reach for a telephone, you normally reach with your dominant hand. If you're dialing a number, you dial with your dominant hand. And so depending on your dominant hand, that's where those items should actually be positioned on your desk. You want to have things like work supplies, pencils, pens, and everything put in containers instead of just thrown around on your desk. A good example is a desk organizer, where you can put almost everything to the right side. You can have sticky notes, you can have paper clips, you can have whiteout. This is envelope moistener, pens, pencils, staplers, notepads, all of those can be placed in an organizer that helps your desk to remain clutter-free. When your desk is full of clutter, there stands a chance that you can increase injury, you can damage company items, company equipment, all of those things. And so it's encouraged to make sure your desk is as neat as possible by using things like these organizers. You want to leave a clear space to use as working area. So your entire desk should not be completely filled with things. They should be organized in a way that helps you to understand what your current task is and to get it done correctly. Like I said, use desk organizers and then keep certain things with it that you use regularly within easy reach. So instead of putting it all the way at the back, all the way at the bottom of the drawer, keep them up front so that you have less shuffling around to do to find what you're looking for. All of this helps you to organize and get your work done much quickly than if you were disorganized. All right. And of course, when we're talking about our desks, the tops of our desk should always be properly organized and arranged because you want to give off the perception that you're neat. You want to give off the perception that you know what you're doing. Organization normally looks like, hey, I know what I'm doing. And so you want to always give off that perception as an office worker. Inside your drawers as well should be organized. And that means that supplies should be placed based on frequency of use. Things that you use frequently should be up front in your drawers. Things that you don't use as much, maybe it's not in your top drawer, maybe it's in the bottom drawer. But things that you frequently go to should really be close to you. Instead of putting it in the file cabinet on the far right corner of your office, maybe you want to put it in your desk drawer that's right next to you so that you can easily access it. They have things like stationary separators that make it easy for you to organize inside of your drawer. Take a look. This is helping this filing drawer be organized. You have filing tabs and everything, separators being used. And here is a piece of appliance that's helping to organize the space with little sections and little dividers that are very convenient. The same here, oftentimes there's a pull-out part of your desk right at the top of the desk. And so even having it there organized can make life easier. Could you imagine the scissors being put just about anywhere and then rummaging through to try and find a pen, and you could easily be cut? Those things don't make for a good office space and is not proper management of the space that you're given in your work environment. All right. You want to place personal items in lower side drawers separate from your work supplies because you just want to keep work and personal items always separate, and then use separators to help you with organization because you always want to stay organized. Another thing we're going to talk about, of course, we're talking about ergonomics. We're talking about being efficient at work. And so we have to talk about office safety. Some things that we need to understand about being in the office to ensure our safety, to show that we can get our work done. And so some ways to practice office safety are going to be, if there's anything that's uncomfortable to you, maybe your back is hurting, you find that your feet are hurting, you want to report any discomfort to your supervisor or to a manager and let them know. You also want to be aware of safety hazards, things like leaving items plugged in that should not be plugged in, leaving cords thrown about in the office space that can cause somebody to trip, leaving certain liquids, I guess, by equipment. All of these things, you want to make sure that you are helping your company out and protecting yourself by being aware of safety hazards and safety issues. Of course, if you come across any of them, you want to make sure to report them as quickly as possible to your supervisor or to a manager. You want to always be aware of your surroundings at work. There's often times when you could be seen as prey if you're not paying attention, whether it be in your office or actually in your work parking lot. But irregardless, you want to take care of yourself and always make sure you are aware of your surroundings. You want to learn how to properly use equipment. That prevents things like breaking equipment and causing the company money, or just having accidents that can affect your health related to pieces of equipment. And so you always want to be aware of how to properly use certain equipment in the office space. You want to put away electrical equipment as much as possible. Don't have it hanging around. Know emergency numbers in the event of an emergency. You should know where the first aid kit is and how to apply first aid. And then you should know the emergency procedures of your company. This makes sure that you can be safe as much as possible. When we talk about safety in the office, we want to make sure that our office is an efficient office. It's so easy to be distracted, and you want to make sure that there are some things in place that prevent distractions so that you can do your best work as an office worker. And so that may mean eliminating distracting noises, minimizing too much talking, gossip, and conversations in the workplace. I'm not saying that you can't have these conversations, but you shouldn't be spending all day conversating and gossiping. You should be doing a great deal of work in the workplace. You can use music in the workplace, but use it to increase your efficiency. If you find that you're listening to something that's not really helping you, is causing you to be distracted, then maybe you shouldn't listen to it. Something soothing and calm is always good. You want to maintain a comfortable climate. It's tough to work when you're too hot, and it's tough to work when you're too cold. So you want to make sure that you dressed appropriately and that you have whatever you need to make sure that in the climate of your office, you're comfortable. Because if the office space is generally a cold one, you want to make sure that you're always dressed to handle the cold if you can't handle it. Or make sure you get something like a heater that helps you to work better in the space. Getting a little fan, something like that is pretty helpful. Thermostats, you want to make sure, pay attention to thermostats. If something is too cold, then you maybe need to speak out about it in your office space. That helps you to be able to focus on what you're doing at work. And then, of course, you avoid things like smoking, drugs, all these other things don't help with you getting your work done and being efficient in the workplace. Next, we're going to talk about time management, because like I said, you can't be efficient in completing tasks if you can't get them done. And so time management is huge and a big responsibility of office workers. You are expected to know how to manage your time. And what does that even mean? What does that look like? Well, you can imagine in an office space, you're going to get multiple tasks to complete. Maybe you have a report. Maybe you have to enter some documents in. You definitely have to file. You're going to need to know how to manage your time so that the tasks that you have actually get done in a reasonable amount of time. And so it's important that what you do is you have to organize your work. It requires you to plan. You have to learn to organize your work. That's one of the greatest tips that you could ever give. Do things right the first time. So try as much as you can to do everything to the best of your ability the first time. Avoid getting things back for small errors and for things that you don't need to get it back for. Complete the task and be done with it. Not complete it with errors that you have to fix over and over and over. You want to complete one task before starting another. Prioritize your time so that you're not starting everything and completing nothing, because that's not being efficient and not good use of your time if you cannot complete a task. You want to avoid interrupting others unnecessarily. Avoid speaking to others unnecessarily in terms of, going out and being distracted. Avoid distractions because they cause you to waste time. Develop a do-it-now attitude. Instead of putting things off, try to get it done now so that you have less things to worry about later on. And then, of course, it's expected, take breaks. You can't keep going on and on. We're not robots. You have to take breaks. Learn to take breaks to clear your mind, to refocus, because office work can be a bit challenging if you're not taking those breaks, especially if you have a lot of documents to do, a lot of work to get done within a certain period of time. As a part of time management, you're going to make sure that you're setting priorities. And so it's suggested determine which tasks are more important and must be completed first. And so when it comes to priorities, some things just aren't as important. Something isn't urgent. For example, filing. Filing is never urgent. Filing is something you can leave for later. It's not something you can ignore forever. But if you have more pressing matters, filing is always going to be something that is not as important. And you're going to see throughout the BGCSE, you get a lot of questions about prioritizing, what to do first, what to do next, putting things in order. And what you want to do is look for things that have to be done before something else can be done. There's no way that I can have a meeting if I haven't done an agenda. I cannot print out and bind and staple and prepare documents if the documents have never been printed. And so when it comes to priorities, identify some things that have to happen before the other thing happens. That's how you determine what you need to do first. If something is urgent, if your boss asks you to do something, those are considered to be urgent. You do those above all things. If it's a telephone call that's not something urgent, then maybe I don't need to call right away. Maybe I need to, do that at lunchtime. Or if you step into the office and you know that a part of helping you with your priorities is checking emails, then that is a major priority. The first thing you do is check emails and see if there's anything new that came up that needs to be done. If something is due on Friday and we have something that's due on next week, Thursday, well, then you want to work on the item for Friday first before you work on the item for next week, Thursday, because the item on Friday is coming up faster and you have less time to complete it. When you have less time to complete something, then that's more of a priority than something you have more time to complete. All right. And so those are just some tips when it comes to setting priorities. Determine which tasks must be completed. The task to complete first should be given priority, and then plan your work based on priorities. So those are really good tips as it relates to making sure you can get your work done in the office. And then finally, a big part of prioritizing and making good use of your time, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions. Sometimes the decisions are based on what to do next. Sometimes your boss presents you with a problem and asks you to make a decision about it. And so some things are said, or there's some advice given about making decisions in the workplace. And so there's a decision-making process, a 4-step process that you can actually follow to help you make a decision. One, you need to identify what the problem is. If you don't stop and identify the problem, you don't know what to decide, or you don't know how serious the decision is. So first step is going to be identify what the problem is, consider the possible choices before just picking a choice. Consider, what choices do I have? Okay, my printer at the office just broke down and I have a report to complete by 12 o'clock. What is the problem? One, the problem is that I don't have a printer and time is running out. I need to print as soon as possible. Two, consider the possible choices. What are the possible choices? Well, I get asked for some more time. I can try and fix my printer, or I can ask somebody else in the office to print it for me, or I can take it down to a printing shop and get it printed. Think of all of the possible choices before you actually make the decision. Once you think of your possible choices, identify the best one. Well, it's not a big report. It's not something difficult to print. So maybe I'm going to ask somebody here if they can assist me with printing the document. And then afterwards, I'm going to call and find out if somebody can help fix my printer for a later time. But the best possible option based on time and not wanting to disturb my boss about something that I can fix would be to ask for help from somewhere else who can print it for me. Once I'm implemented my best choice, because obviously I'm going to be the worst, then you evaluate the outcome. Okay, did that work out? Yes, it did. I was able to print the document on time before 12 o'clock and get it to where it needed to go well before 12 o'clock by asking somebody else to use their printer. That's perfect. If, of course, your outcome is negative, then you need to learn from the decision made and maybe think again when you have a similar situation to make. Like I said in a previous topic, a big part of office and office work is learning from your mistake and being willing to learn. And so every decision may not be a positive decision or turn out the best way with the best outcome, but you just want to make sure that you learn from it, apologize when need be, rectify the situation, and just improve for next time. And that will allow you to be a much better office worker, and it would allow you to be much better at your job if you're making the right decisions. And so that's it for this topic. This topic just gives us an idea of how to be an efficient worker, because that's very key in office work today, being efficient, getting work done on time, and getting work done correctly. You can't get work done if you're preoccupied with safety problems. If you're not feeling well, you can't get your work done. If you can't properly see your screen, if your screen is not where it should be and you're straining your neck, you're straining your arm, you're straining your back, you're falling down on equipment, and you can't find tools that you need because you're unorganized, well, then it's going to be harder to get your work done in a timely manner. Okay? It's important to know these things are crucial in any working environment. Know the safety measures in place. Know how to remain safe while you're working so that you can work and have a good peace of mind. When you have your different tasks that you're going to have, you want to make sure you're as efficient as possible by prioritizing and taking your time to organize your workspace, organize tasks, and identifying what needs to be done when, so that you can complete your tasks timely as well as correct. Okay? And of course, no matter what, there's some type of decision that has to be made as an office worker. You don't want to spend too much time trying to think of something to do in that decision. And so you want to follow that decision-making step process to make life easier. That's it for this topic. Feel free to get in touch. You know the email, you know the Instagram. Get back to me and we will make everything work. Bye. Hi, Brenda here. I just want to take the time to say thank you for choosing this course. Thank you for choosing yourself and for preparing, as you should, for Office Procedures BGCSE. Look forward to more from me and Business Teacher Powell, and I look forward to seeing you in other classes. Bye.